I guess we are pretty much at that point, aren't we? I'm just
Okay,
trying.
I'm gonna start recording now.
Of course, as I did that, I flipped away from our agenda on my other iPad, so I have to just grab that back.
Ian is now host.
Okay, and I was finding my agenda on my iPad because I flipped around on it a little bit. So call to order for the meeting, and welcome to all of the trustees and to Janice and to Gary and a few members of the public. If we could just get started with the approval of the agenda and call for any late additions to the agenda.
I just have a couple which maybe will be part of Gary's report, but I don't know.
Okay, fire away.
The parcel tax, not a tax sale, that was going to be explained at the strategic meeting, and either I missed it or didn't. Status of the ENN railway invoices and the cost of building an office washroom, which Gary was going to look into. Again, maybe those are already going to be covered, but.
So clarifications, parcel tax, not a tax sale. I assume that relates to outstanding collections.
Yeah, and Gary was going to explain what the issue was, and I missed that explanation.
What our options were is how I understood it.
Okay.
Yeah. The railway invoices, I think that is it's an operational issue. We were updated on it, and I would not necessarily think we have to address that at a committee of the whole meeting, and I would expect it perhaps to be a part of the interim administrator's report that we would see at the board meeting as to the status of that item.
Okay.
Does that satisfy you?
Yep.
Okay. And the cost of the washroom, I think that will get addressed under new business number 4, although I don't think we'll be talking specifically about how much is the washroom going to cost, but it will be about the process that we're going to use to make a decision on the office and all those sorts of things, right? Because that was a part of our strategic planning exercise.
Yeah.
So why don't we leave it to there, and if the question remains, then we'll deal with it then. Is that okay?
Yep.
Great. Anybody else? Sorry.
And again, I apologize if this is already covered. Gary's very excellent to-do list. I noticed what was missing was adding the transfer of the RBC debt to the Municipal Finance Authority.
I think that was part of the conversion activities as opposed to.
Okay.
And the reason I say that is because we can't actually do that. CVRD has to do that. We're not eligible for municipal financing, right? And we have to wait till conversion happens before and then they can do it.
Right, I understand. I knew that. I just didn't want that lost in the massive quantity of things we have to do.
Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah, let's make sure that gets addressed under number 4 as well. Just at least pass through it, right? So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Okay. So any other items for the agenda? Eve, Ted? Eve says no. Ted?
Looks like we lost Ted.
Did we? We did.
Mr. Chairman, just 2 quick points from me. I can briefly speak to all 4 of those items brought up by Trustee Kelger when I get to either 4A or 5B. Also, just 2 quick points. Janice did circulate the November 2020 financial statements today. We're not proposing that they be put on the agenda of today's committee of the whole meeting, but what we've indicated is, or Janice has indicated to me, is that she'll have the draft statements for December, which we will put on the February regular board meeting, just for an overview and any questions. Second point I just want to briefly raise is, and I'll get into this in the conversion report where we're at. We are proposing to host CVRD staff, particularly from the water and the legislative services sections of CVRD, to come to UBID on Thursday, February the 18th, to do a comprehensive tour of the water treatment plant and to discuss all of those issues related to the plant and associated with the plant that are documented and brought up at the strategic planning session, as well as have the legislative team from CVRD come by. They would like to do a tour of our office building, the fire hall, just to get oriented in terms of the assets and records and things like that. So our next regular board meeting is scheduled for February the 18th. So I'm would recommend or request that if at all possible, perhaps we push that regular board meeting back a week, so that the CVRD's dates, because they have a large staff and they're trying to coordinate departments, their dates are very, very limited. So what I'm suggesting is if we could stay the course and have all those tours done on February 18th at the staff level, if we could switch the regular board meeting maybe into the following week, that would be great.
Okay, so I'd anticipate that being just a new business item for us to make a motion to move the meeting and amend our calendar of meetings. Is Ted back?
Yeah, finally, I had no volume.
Any items for the agenda, Ted?
No, well, that's fine.
Okay. So I think what we've heard here is that there's a number of things listed. The idea of the railway invoices we're leaving to just basically be an operational issue and be addressed in any reports that are given to the board at the regular board meeting. The cost of the washroom, we will hold that as just a comment or questions that will occur in new business item 4A, just reviewing what we're doing with our strategic planning outcomes. The MFA issue, I think we are leaving to conversion to make sure that it's covered within the legislative or the finance elements of the conversion plan. Parcel taxes and what we're doing to collect them. I'm not sure we're ready to address that at this agenda. Would you say, Gary? Is it something that research is still ongoing?
Not at this time, not on this agenda, Mr. Chairman. However, I believe Mary Reynolds did forward some past history on this particular issue, which was somewhat informative. So as I've indicated, we have already, or we will very shortly be paying the 2021 invoice. However, we will not be paying at this point in time the 2013, I believe it is, to 19 accumulated invoices, because what I'd like to do, two things, one's in progress. I've asked Mr. Warren at the CVRD to check in as to whether any other jurisdictions that they have authority over have received similar invoices and what their practice has been or is at this point in time. And he's doing that. He's sent it to finance to let me know whether or not how they've dealt with this issue, because I'm sure they've received invoices. And the second thing is dependent on what he's going to tell me. I probably would want to get a little bit of legal advice in terms of what the current status of those agreements are. They seem to be relevant, but obviously it appears that the UBID did receive some legal advice back in 2013-14, which I'm not privy to, saying that these agreements may not be totally in full force and effect. So we need to get a little bit of legal advice before I bring a report back to the board.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right, and then we will add an agenda item just to discuss, to move the meeting from February 18th to February 25th. So on that basis, we're going to add one item to the agenda, approval of the agenda. Can I have a motion, please?
So moved.
Second.
Second.
All right, all in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Second item on the agenda, adoption of the minutes from the committee of the whole meeting Thursday, January the 7th. If everybody could review and note any additions, changes, deletions. All in, so any amendments, or should we just vote to adopt them, approve them? Motion
So
to,
moved.
you have moved to adopt the meeting, the minutes,
Yeah.
second.
Well, second.
All in favor, say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Okay, on to a new business, and item number 1 under new business is to revisit and I guess discuss and confirm the outputs and outcomes from our January 26th board strategic planning and priority setting session. So with that, our facilitator and note keeper and organizer on that was Gary, so I'll let him walk us through his documents, his spreadsheet that was attached to the agenda package, just to make sure that we're all in agreement with where we've left this, and then we can decide where to go from there.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Really, the purpose of me compiling this spreadsheet, I like to have an accurate record of what we discussed and ultimately decided on. I just want to confirm with the board that I got this right, that I was hearing you correctly. This is what I came out of the meeting with in terms of directions moving forward. I can tell you that with each of these items, I have had at least preliminary discussions with appropriate parties to try to move these things along. I'll just go very briefly through them. And again, the purpose is just to get a confirmation from the board that yes, this is your direction. And B, I guess this is the last opportunity or an opportunity to, you know, if I missed something, to correct or add. On the B parcels, this is one I have had a discussion with Dan in the past week since last week's session. I'm pretty clear on the information that he has in regards to those parcels which are currently being charged for water. I need to have a further discussion with Janice because I've been asking her to concentrate on the financials in regards to what pieces of information are missing with respect to these B parcels. Then my next direction will be to confirm with legal counsel that we can in fact legally charge these parcels, and to discuss with them a timeline, a process, and ultimately, you know, what the enforceability mechanisms would be if there's non-payment. And at the meeting, I briefly overviewed, you know, from what I'm seeing now, we have potentially 3 options, I guess, if they are added to the tax roll and there's non-compliance. Small claims court, some sort of a notice or a lien on the property, or a tax sale. Tax sale, I have my doubts about, but this is very much, you know, something that we intend to move forward. We may, the CBRD has applied for some grant monies to assist in the conversion process. I'm talking to CVRD about possibly, if the ministry approves that grant request, to get a little bit of money to perhaps assist with getting a bit more resources to move a couple of these projects along to augment what resources we have in place. B parcels would be one of them. Updating an amendment of the subdivision bylaw. I had quite a long discussion on Monday with the Legislative Services Group at CVRD on conversion, of which planning is part of that group. We discussed the subdivision bylaw. I have provided the subdivision bylaw and the legal opinion to the CVRD so that they're aware of the issue. And the question that I need to get clearer and they need to get clearer are what is the status of that bylaw now, as well as what would be the status of that bylaw if it was amended come July 1st. So I'm waiting to hear back from the CVRD on that, but they've been brought up to speed on that bylaw and their planning people are reviewing it. Because before I engage legal counsel to spend some money on amendments, I got to be clearer in terms of what the force and effect of that bylaw is going to be after conversion. Water treatment plant, separate office, washroom building. Again, I'm planning to, we're trying to get a tour organized, a comprehensive tour on February the 18th, where the primary staff, principal staff from the water branch of CVRD, as well as legislative services, come to UBID. I will come up there for the day. And in the morning, what I'm proposing is trying to do a comprehensive tour of the water treatment plant, including all of the issues, including the office, principally the office washroom building, and to discuss options with them and some of the past history and what we've been looking at and get some input from them. But I'm also going to raise all of the other issues in terms of the category 2 group, the settling ponds, the transfer of the trailer, the storage and shop container, fencing, those types of things. So that is in process, and I hope to be able to have that tour on the 18th of February. Category 2, the procurement of the new fire apparatus. We'll cover that off in number 5C. There was a meeting of the select committee last week, and we're moving forward on 2 fronts, basically, to finalize some specifications, as well as to get a process moving forward on getting a request for proposals in place once those specs are decided upon, and a report would come back to the board before we would carry on and move forward. Development of a 5-year capital plan. I've had discussions with the finance director at the CVRD, who is leading the finance conversion team there. I've indicated that it would be our desire to at least start the process of putting together a 5-year capital plan. I've had discussions with Ken Dahl in regards to that and with Dan. And I think what this is going to come down to is before we can really put together a 5-year capital plan that doesn't have a whole pile of holes and question marks in it, we need to firstly start with some engineering and cost analysis work on the costs of repairs and upgrading of the water delivery system. Some of the numbers for the plant are known, but I think we need to do some work on the costs of the delivery system and the gaps in information that were noted in the conversion study. And then on the second page, category 3, I did put a little bullet beside initiating collection action against the delinquent tolls, taxes, parcel charges. I'm kind of wrapping that into the whole issue of the B parcels as well. I mean, if we have outstanding delinquent tolls, taxes, parcel charges, that can be part and parcel of the legal advice that we get on, okay, so how do we enforce, what are our enforcement mechanisms in the process for this? So this is one that I would not see deferring to post-conversion. We can kind of pick that up in the whole parcel, the B parcel charges issue. So that's it. I'll leave it at that. This is a summary of what came out of the meeting last week. It was most helpful for me. And my intention is moving forward to every 2 weeks, have a little standing item where I can report to you on the progress and where we're at with each of these items. And I anticipate having to come back with maybe some advice in terms of, well, we thought we may be going here, but maybe we need to go here first type of thing. I'll leave it at that. Thanks, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so my thoughts on this would be that we pretty much needed a motion to adopt this as our priorities. And if we have that motion, we can then put that motion out, get it seconded. We can have a discussion before we vote on it. So I would like a motion to adopt this principal outcomes from the January 26, 2021 UBID Board Strategic Planning Priority Setting Session.
So moved.
On the table. Okay, second?
Second.
Okay, so discussion, and left to right starts with, I think, Eve. It does.
I'm good with as Gary presented it.
All right. So second on my list then would be Ted.
Yes,
Suzanne, sorry.
Go ahead.
Ted, go ahead. You go ahead. I skipped Susanna, but we'll get her coming back.
Sorry, Susanna.
That's okay.
Anyhow, Ian, I agree with what our CAO has said, and I'm for doing exactly these things regarding all of these statements. One thing I did not mention was that I did go up with Ian, Pam, to Cumberland and met Mike and went over the fire truck that was there that is similar to what we're proposing to work towards, and it was pretty amazing. Otherwise, I agree with the statements and to move forward on this.
Okay. Thank you. Susanna?
Yep, I totally agree as well with what has been laid out, and I really appreciate the amount of work that has been done by Gary and Janice and everyone, and how clear the plan is.
Okay, thank you. And my only comment on this would be to reiterate what Susanna just said is I'm very happy with the structure and organization and professionalism of how this came together. I would add a caveat to it that everybody has a plan until the fight starts, right? And then, yeah, you never know what might come out of the blue that causes us to shift in priorities. But this is such a great place to start, and I think we have to use it as that sort of guideline.
I agree.
So if there's no other comments, can we just have a vote on the motion to adopt? Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 Awesome. Okay, back in the agenda to item number 4B, which would be a simple motion to amend our schedule of meetings to move the February 18th regular board meeting to February 25th at 2:30 p.m. So motion on the table. Could I have a seconder?
I so move. I second.
Okay, discussion. Does everybody understand the reason?
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
really,
make sure it's posted publicly ASAP, we have, I think, we have to provide notice to the public.
Right.
yeah, so if we get that out today, tomorrow, I think that's sufficient notice to reschedule. My comment is like, we're going to be faced with these types of decisions moving forward because we're dependent on the actions of the CVRD to help us get through this. And sometimes, when we see that we either do it on February 18th or we do it a month later, that we don't have that month. So I think we're going to face these types of decisions more than once, and I appreciate everybody's flexibility to go with it. Ted, any comments?
No, it's a process, and as you say, it's going to be in combination with the CVRD to help us through it.
Okay. Eve?
No.
Great. Okay, so can we have a vote then? All in favor, say aye.
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 Okay. Section 5 of the agenda, unfinished business. The first item on here is the water leak policy, which we voted in, I believe, November to rescind effective January 1st. And in our strategic planning session, we talked about this somewhat. And there's a relationship between this and another decision we took last year, which was in October, regarding metering software or an automated metering process, and new software we would have to buy and new metering devices and those sorts of things, where we appreciated Superintendent McGill's work and agreed that it was a good idea to do that, but the timing was such that because CVRD already has that software, that we thought that it would be ill-advised to purchase a copy for 6 months overlap. So we deferred on metering. There has since been a couple of inquiries from landowners about our logic and rationale for doing it, and a sense that it was onerous and those sorts of things. So we thought it was a good idea to revisit thoughts about the rescinding of that policy, and to reconsider if there's anything different we would want to do with respect to metering and those sorts of things. So I'm not sure, there's no motion at this point in time. It's a discussion. I've kind of provided my background on it. I'd ask Gary if he would like to add anything further than what I've done there. Then I just open it up for discussions and thoughts from everybody.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. I confess to not being, really, I wouldn't say up to speed, but I'm not privy to the history of this so much, or the discussions in the fall when you revisited this particular policy. I can say that Janice has some financial information in regards to the amount of the leak, I guess I'll call them rebates, going back the last couple of years, I understand. Also, we've got a couple of situations this year that have emerged. And really, I put this back on the agenda. I've included the leak policy, the 2005 leak policy, which was rescinded, as well as the Public Works Superintendent's metering report, which was presented in October, for a further discussion and an exploration of what the options are. And I could speak to, the options, I guess, as I see them. But firstly, maybe I'll ask Janice, are you okay to just give the board a little bit of a financial snapshot of where we've been in the past year or two with this and where we sit now?
Yes, my dog just got home from daycare, so. Basically, I have the stats for when we switched over to iCity for the leak allowances. I'm just gonna let my dog in the house, okay?
Sorry, I need clarification on what iCity is and what year.
That's the new billing software.
Yeah.
That's our accounting software for
Okay.
tracking the water billing. So in 2020, we had 83 leak allowances for a total of $17,045.04. So averages to $205.37 per leak allowance, but that's just the average, you know, like some were small, some were huge. So I guess the issue is if you get rid of the leak allowances, you have to allow some other mechanism for tracking leaks. And that's what Danny's proposal for the new metering would have done. So basically we have given credit of over 17,000 for the 2020 year alone. And in the 2019 year, it was 7,000. Sorry, just gotta hang up. So, you know, between the two of them, it's like $24,000 in credits in 2 years.
Did you go back further?
Well, I could only go back to when we started with iCity, which was only a half year. So in 2018, for the half year, the credits were $2,016.56.
So this has been escalating pretty quick.
Huge, yeah.
Yeah.
And, you know, we had talked to some degree about the problem ones that we just had. You know, there's a $2,400 bill, there's, you know, and they will be applying for a leak allowance because it was to the end of December. And then there's another one for just under 2,500. So, you know, that's $4,000. Yeah,
That's huge.
yeah.
So are you, sorry, Janice, are you complete?
Yes.
Are we ready for discussion? Because I have some thoughts.
Then I think you should start us off.
Okay, I have been thinking about this a lot. I certainly understand the homeowners, you know, being concerned about this. I still stand by our decision to rescind the policy for all the reasons that Chair Monroe laid out. I do have an idea that I think is feasible and cost effective. And that, may I proceed with my idea?
Absolutely.
Okay. That we hire a contractor to do the meter readings using our existing technology, and that they be done monthly. And that that we provide flags to that contractor so that every time there's a reading which stands out significantly as different from the previous month, a flag is placed by the meter, which would indicate to the, and we, of course, we would explain all that on our website, but the flag would indicate that this is an alert. Your reading is significantly higher than previous months. You need to look into it. So we would continue with bi-monthly billing as we have, but we would satisfy the landowners with information by way of the flag that there's something amiss. As we discussed at great length in our November meeting, that is the responsibility of the landowners, the leak. And that goes with sewer pipes, with all kinds of piping. What's on your property, which is problematic, is the responsibility of the landowner. So this would be a simple, reasonably cost-effective means to alert landowners in between the monthly billing cycle until such time as we are converted to the CVRD and we can look at amalgamating. So that's
Okay.
my idea.
Thank you. Eve, any thoughts, comments?
I guess I would have to know how much it would cost to do this monthly meter read. that Susanna has just suggested, but otherwise, I think I stand by my original decision. It's for 6 months. I think we'd be naive to think we wouldn't get pushback on this. For all the reasons you said, I mean, it's our responsibility as homeowners and we've given leak allowances for years, so I just don't agree we should rescind it or change it, and that's just how I think.
Okay, thank you. Ted?
I have mixed emotions on it. For some people that are retired on a budget, to have a leak allowance disappear and it ends up a $2,000 bill, it's a pretty scary situation. I think it's almost on an individual basis the way we should go. Again, the cost of $17,000 over the last couple of years is a heck of a lot of money. To change the software out for new meters, again, software costs a fortune. We're on the verge of switching to the CVRD, which at that time would make it more feasible. Right now, we can't afford to be making that switch. It's a conundrum. What Susanna said about having someone go around and check meter readings against the last reading by monthly, that's a good idea. I think a homeowner would be grateful if a meter person came around once a month and checked the meter and it was out of sorts. I think they would be very happy to hear it, because I don't know of too many people who pop open the lid and read the meter from the last reading. They just wait till they get their bill. So I think that is a good suggestion, and that's not that expensive to do. So I go along with Susanna when it comes to that idea of having someone go around once every 4 weeks or once a month and do that process. I think that's about the most economical thing that we can do for the time being. And that's it for me.
Thank you. I think I'm in the same boat as everybody else is. Like I feel for this. Like I see that these leaks are not easy to discover. If they're an underground leak, it doesn't always appear on the surface, particularly in our rainy months when there's enough surface water anyways. Hard to tell them apart at times. That said, $17,000, if we were to have to recover that in our billing, in our tolls, it would require us to increase our base rate by a further 3.5%, I think, is the number. And we've already raised our tolls by, or our base rate by something in the neighborhood of 20%, I think. And that was such a big part of this, right? So while it's hard for someone to face a large bill, is it fair that it is a single landowner's infrastructure that fails, that is insured essentially by all other landowners? Mm-hmm. And that I think, you can predict failures based on age of property as well.
Could I just?
And I'd like to finish if I could, Susanna, please.
Sorry.
With the age of properties, we're seeing more failures. You can see it going from $2,000 to $7,000 to $17,000. So I think as people's properties age, there's an incumbency on them to inspect their own infrastructure. So I am, and I'd like to also comment on the software side of things. I believe Inspector McGill did a great job with that analysis, and his recommendations are sound. Timing is difficult right now, given that, and I've had a conversation with Gary about, is there something we could do with the software company that would not require us to buy a full license and let us get a jump start on this process? Like, is there software rental for 6 months that we could then convert over to the CVRD license? Is there a trial license that we can use? Can we pay for the maintenance of the software and not the software? Like, can we investigate with this software company if there's something they can do to help us move through it? I'm not certain. Like, I come out of that industry. I can see that that might be a difficult argument. That that's the way they make money, selling licenses, right? So, but I've asked, is there something we can do there? But even if we did have that software right now, we would not have it implemented in time to meet conversion for sure. Like there's going to be a delay time to get meters installed that can be read automatically, that homeowners can tap into from the internet to say, what's my meter reading look like, that they can send alerts via email, those sorts of things, right? So we're heading in that direction. I think that's going to be a service to the landowners down the street or down the road. But I think the analysis that says a 3.5% increase in taxes to cover this isn't responsible on our part, given what we just went through. So that's the end of my comments. And Susanna, thank you for allowing me to finish, and I'll turn it back to you.
I just wanted to do the math, which is it's actually $26,000 in 2.5 years.
Yeah, and I just used 1 year when I did my
Yeah.
math, right? Yeah. So
Yeah,
so
that's it.
any other thoughts from folks, or like I don't think there's any motion required unless we choose. I see Gary would like to make a comment.
Thanks, Mr. Chairman. 3 thoughts on this. The first thought I have is a caution on the issue of hiring a contractor. Of course, we are unionized. There's a collective agreement which says that you really can't contract out work that is done by the bargaining unit. So I suspect there would be some concerns raised by the union on hiring an external contractor to do those, monthly readings to identify any alerts. That's point number 1. Point number 2 is I'd want to, if this motion was to be carried, I'd certainly want to have a chat with Dan about the implications of, okay, so if this work is going to be now done in-house pursuant to the agreement, what are his thoughts about taking on that additional process now on a monthly basis? We certainly need to get his input from an operational perspective. And then the third thought I have, and it's not casting any doubt on his recommendations, taken in isolation, I think they're quite sound and they make a lot of sense. But again, and I guess you'll be hearing me say this more and more, I would question the merits of investing monies and resources into upgrades of, capital equipment when we're so close to a conversion process. And again, this is an item I would want to have a discussion with the CVRD about. So at this point in time, I keep coming back to, maybe the best option is to stay the course at this point in time. And we can certainly do further thinking and consultation with the CVRD and with Dan in terms of any operational mitigation measures. But, at this point in time, I'm more inclined to say, stay the course with the decision that you've made back in October or November.
Thank you, Gary. One more time around if Ted or Eve have anything else they'd like to add.
I'd just like to agree with your point, Ian, about it's all the landowners that have to foot this bill. And I don't think that's fair either. So I really think we should just stay the course. And I don't even think what Gary brings up a good point about the union and how much time it takes to read monthly. I think we'd really need to get our staff to do it if we were going to go that route. Thanks.
Okay. Ted, anything further?
No, not really. It's again, conversion is in July. I don't know if the regional district can move ahead before that time towards helping Dan doing a conversion. Otherwise, I don't think we can ill afford that right now. And when the CVRD takes over, I can imagine that they will have monies or apply for monies for that. And I think we have to really leave it alone. I'm just hoping that there is no serious leaks. That's what every landowner hopes, I'm sure.
So I think what I'm hearing is we don't need to move to take any action with respect to any past motions. And I think what I'm also hearing, well, I want to confirm this part, is, well, Susanna had an idea about a way of flagging landowners that they might have a problem. Gary has raised some thoughts around the union contracts and also around, you know, the use of resources given everything else that's on our plate right now. What it triggered in my mind is there something that we might want to publish an explanation as to why we went down this path? And also in that explanation include, here's how you check your meter readings. If you're concerned, look at your bill. Here's where you find your last reading. Here's how you find what your water's at now. Here's how you interpret those numbers. If it would be worth us putting some kind of post out so that it's basically a DIY guide for landowners to be able to look and get an indication if they have a leak or not. So that would be the only thing that came out of it for me is there some form of guidance that we can give?
I agree with there, as long as they take the lid off properly and put it back on properly. That's the other thing.
I completely agree. That was done for the analog hydrometers, how to read your hydrometer. A simple little YouTube video, perhaps Dan could star in it, showing us how to properly take the lid off, how to, you know, yes, I totally agree. I think we need to be clear and informative to the public so that they can do their due diligence, which, you know, and properly manage their property.
So Gary, I'm proposing something that has some work in it, obviously, that somebody'd have to put together some sort of post or publication, or as Susanna suggests, a rockstar video for Dan. What are your thoughts on it? Yeah.
Yeah, right.
Janice, who has done those posts in the past that are kind of public works, technical, little more technical oriented?
You're muted.
Oh,
Janice is.
Janice is muted.
Is muted.
Yeah, I'm good now. Gary's gone. I know Zinc did stuff, but they didn't even really consult the Public Works Department. And I think between Sonia and Danny, they can do a technical report. They have the information, they can pull it together. And I think they're very capable of doing it.
You can take the video.
Yeah, no, they can do it all.
Good.
Yeah.
So back to Gary, who is now on mute and his camera is turned off.
Oh, he's back.
Here he comes. He's got it clean.
You need to be, you're on mute still, Gary.
I'm on my wife's iPad. You throw a new piece of technology at me, oh man. Okay. Okay, that's fine. We'll talk to Dan about and Sonia maybe crafting something for the website that's pretty clear and simple and an alert. Okay, good. Thank you.
Anybody sense any motion required here?
So moved. Let's just do it.
Yeah, I second that.
Okay, all in favor, say aye.
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 So our motion essentially is to stay the course with motions already made and to provide an explanation and a how-to for our landowners. Okay, speaking of iPads, I have to turn mine back on to get to our agenda. So second item under unfinished business is the conversion process verbal status update report from Gary. And this is really going to be a standing item. Our our COW meetings will largely be an informal verbal update, and the board meetings, Gary will cover this stuff in his usual report as well. But I will turn it over to him just to give everybody an update on what's going on with this conversion process.
Thanks very much, Mr. Chairman. So the conversion process, certainly at the staff level, has very much proceeded. I've been involved in quite a few calls and Zoom meetings with the CVRD. They basically have 7 staff working groups covering off areas like communications, legislative services, finance, purchasing, street lighting, water. There's one other one. And I've connected with virtually everyone from the CVRD who is leading those respective areas. Just a couple of little snapshots, and the working group, I think, is meeting next week. So those of you that are on the working group will be hearing about some of this. But just in the past week, basically on the communications front, stand by for some changes that we're talking about to the UBID website. The conversion, the UBID conversion link, basically to update it. It's a little bit out of date, and to update it, simplify it a little bit, and bring it into consistency with what's updated information is on the CVRD site. So essentially, it'll be pretty simple. Hey, there was a referendum, it was successful, the process has started. There's a working group, meetings have started. Stay tuned for further updates on a regular basis through newsletters and on the website. And if you wish to refer to further information, more detailed, go to the CVRD website with respect to conversion. So that's essentially what we're talking about. So we're hoping to do those updates to the UBID website, just the conversion tab, next week. Legislative services, they have provided Janice and I with a detailed checklist, right down to fine details like change signing authorities from UBID to the CVRD. Very detailed. And Susanna, this is where an item such as transferring debt to the MFA and to CVRD, that's where something like that is covered off. Actually more in the finance area, but they've got a checklist too. So that type of an operational issue is certainly captured on these very detailed checklists. And really the first step is this tour that we're proposing to have on February 18th. They're going to come to the administrative offices. They're going to do an inventory of everything from the number of records boxes, chairs, tables, computers, space, look at the lease. I'm going to take them up to the plant to show them some of the records that have been taken up there for temporary storage. So we've got a detailed checklist, which is really going to be our driver between now and the end of June in terms of ensuring that all of those items are checked off. And this is a list really that CVRD's compiled, as well as the ministry. Finance, I've had a discussion with the finance chair, the lead staff person, about their particular issues as well. They're gonna be doing the same thing. That will involve Janice to a very, fairly heavy extent in terms of financial issues. Accumulated surpluses, debt, reserve funds, all those types of things, sorting out what's the status of all of that. I have had a discussion with him about the issue of a 5-year capital plan and leveraging some assistance from the CVRD. They do that in-house, of course, not that I'm asking them to do it, but clearly I think we can leverage some assistance and some resources. It's in their interests for us to advance a 5-year capital plan to turn over to them so that they have more clarity in regards to our current, short and long-term capital situation. And this is where I'm thinking now more that the first priority, and it's very much a part of a 5-year capital planning exercise, is to get something underway with respect to an inventory of the water distribution system, the current upgrading requirements as well as the current condition. So to get a handle on the financial impact, both in the short and the longer term. So more to follow on that. I've had a discussion with their procurement people, their purchasing agent people, and they're prepared to give us assistance. And I can just touch on this in item C, the new fire apparatus. They're prepared to give us assistance in terms of drafting a request for proposals when we get there for the new apparatus. So they're in the loop now about what we're proposing to do. Their street lighting lead has, he was part of one of my meetings. He has connected with Dan, who's the better principal staff person to speak to, at least initially, on the myriad of questions they have about street lighting and the status of LED lights and, you know, the various hydro programs and what we're in and what we're out of and those types of things. Water. Again, I have not had a conversation with the water lead at this point in time, but the water area is the principal area of most significant importance that is driving our desire to have a tour of the water treatment plant facility and all of the associated infrastructure on February the 18th. And we're trying to pull together that basically to do two things on the 18th. So that's basically it where we're at this point in time. I mentioned the subdivision bylaw. Planning is part of the legislative services component. So they have our subdivision bylaw, and we're going to have a further discussion about where that whole issue should be going. I anticipate that and a couple of these other items that I just mentioned will be brought up at the working group meeting next week with the full group. So that's and I do propose that on a bi-weekly basis, this to be a standing agenda item, so I can just keep everyone informed in regards to where we're at. But the process is definitely moving along. Oh, one final area: human resources. It's a committee comprised of CVRD, UBID, and QP. And we met last week. It was a good meeting. And the group is looking at the collective agreements, comparing and contrasting the collective agreements for both UBID and for CVRD, seeing where there's differences, where they're the same, where there may have to be improvements, but a marrying of the agreements. So that work is in process as well. So bottom line, the process is very much underway, and we're going to be updating the website, pretty consistently in terms of issues as we move along. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Gary. Out to the trustees, any questions for Gary?
Yeah, I have a little one. The inventory of the water main system, which I'm very glad to hear about. Will that be GIS?
Yes,
Great.
it would be. And
Great.
Just to let you know what I'm thinking here, and I have had a chat with the deputy CAO, and my understanding is that CVRD has made application for additional funds from the ministry to assist with the conversion process. And that application is, I believe, in stream. I don't know how much they applied for. I don't believe anything has been awarded, but certainly from our perspective, I'd be asking for consideration to be given to maybe getting a portion of that funding to augment some resources here locally. For example, on the water distribution system, one of the main recommendations from the conversion study is that there needs to be a proper inventory and accounting for the current condition of the system and an estimated capital cost for upgrading, not necessarily all in 1 year, but over a period of time. That would be work that would logically be done by our engineering consultants who know the system to a certain extent. Certainly they know the water plant, and there would be some cost involved in that. So that would potentially be a little Coors project, for example. So if I could potentially get some hands on some of that money, that's how I would probably be approaching the 5-year capital plan issue. Start with that first, because that's a huge part of a 5-year capital plan. We've got order of magnitude numbers for a new fire hall. Admin is not so much an issue with no further requirements for a building, but it's really coming down to water and probably fire as the two big ones. And water is a huge unknown, particularly with respect to the distribution system. But yes, it would be a bit of a GIS exercise.
Eve, any questions?
No, thanks.
Ted?
Well, the only thing I can add regarding the RFP for the new fire truck is they're getting closer to what they need. And when I looked at what Cumberland has in a fire truck, I was just absolutely amazed at that truck. It's not just a fire truck, it's everything that's in it. It's really overwhelming. And again, the fire chief in Cumberland, they're going to be moving into their new fire hall in the next 3 weeks. And he's quite willing to turn around and help our fire chief as well come to a consensus on the things that are needed for this fire truck. And they've really done a good job so far going over a lot of the things that they need. But it could take a year, even after everything is done. It could take up to a year for a fire truck to show up. So they're doing it, and they're doing their due diligence. Well, I'm very pleased.
Thank you. And I have no further comments. I appreciate Gary's diligence and attention to all of this. I'm not sure we could do this without you, Gary. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So if we're done with that item, the item C is the procurement of the new fire apparatus, and we've kind of been sprinkling it throughout the agenda and speaking of it, and Ted just gave us some of an update there too. I'll turn this back to Gary and Ted as the chair of the select committee. Is there anything further that we need to review and update with respect to the fire apparatus? Like, for example, do we have a target date where an RFP would go out, those kinds of things? I'd just be interested if there's anything further that would be of interest.
I think
Mr. Chair,
go ahead, Ian. Go ahead, Ian.
Not really. I think I've covered most of it, Mr. Chairman. The committee met last week. I think it was a good meeting. Mr. Bitton, the chief, and Ted went up to Cumberland to view an apparatus. And I think that went well. Basically, where I see the process right now is that we've still got a little bit of work to do to sort of hammer home the specifications, both the desired and the required must-have specs, as well as the desired specs in terms of the functionality of the apparatus. That's kind of a technical exercise. The 3 members are diligently working on that. From my side of things, I've told the committee that I'm certainly in a position to provide assistance on the request for proposals. I've had discussions with the CVRD, both their fire lead and their procurement person, and they are prepared to give us assistance when it comes to that. Get the specs hammered out first, and the desired and the desired and mandatory specs. Get that hammered out first. Then they're prepared to assist us in the drafting of an RFP. In fact, they've provided me with 2 pro forma template RFP documents, one 2 years old, the other one that's current as we speak. And certainly that's huge, because I don't see a requirement for us having to engage extra consulting dollars to do something like that. And they're prepared to, once we put a draft together, review it. I didn't get any pushback from the CBRD. They've been very good on it. Yes, that's great. They're up to speed. That's good. They know that we're proposing to do this, and ideally maybe kick the RFP out the door before conversion. And I don't know, even be in a position to make an award. What they are thinking about, though, I guess, is that certainly we wouldn't be getting a vehicle until a year down the road. So what they're thinking about is, okay, so how would this work in the sense that we issue the RFP, but then conversions happened, and now, they obviously would be involved with our fire personnel in reviewing the tenders and then making an award and basically carrying on the file from there. But I certainly didn't get any of, oh, whoa, why? Time out. What are you guys doing purchasing a new apparatus? So I think I think this one's definitely moving forward. And I of course would come back to the board with a report to seek final authority to issue an RFP, something of that consequence, and to confirm what the source of funding is going to be. Thank you.
Thank you. Ted.
Yeah, that's right. It's moving forward and it's coming together, but it's not just a fire truck. It's all the equipment that goes on that fire truck, how it's put on that fire truck and how it's enclosed. It's just amazing the amount of equipment that fits into one of these fire trucks and how it fits into it. It's pretty amazing. And the cost of some of this equipment is a lot of money. And again, it is coming together. I'm not saying that the fire truck that Union Bay has is going to have all the bells and whistles of the one in Cumberland, but they have a very good handle on what they need. And I think it's going to come together okay.
I guess that's an interesting question in terms of how we as a board will review requirements, in that, you can have you're buying a car, it can be a basic model or it can be a luxury car, right? And, certainly what is the minimum requirement for the services that we need to offer, and is minimum enough would be my questions. But how are we going to know to make those decisions? So however we can be supported by the committee and the fire chief and sort of comparisons to other regions, those sorts of things, because I for one am not an expert on fire trucks, and if somebody comes and says I need A, B, C through to Z, I don't know how to make that decision right now. So I'd appreciate whatever we can bring forward on that. Gary?
Well,
I
Mr.
think-
Chair.
Yeah,
Sorry,
I think the
go ahead,
fire
Ted.
chief, really has a pretty good handle on it. And he's also getting assistance from other fire chiefs as well. And again, it's a process of the fire chief and other fire chiefs have a pretty good idea on the things that you need for your own area, depending on the type of roads you go up and down, and all the rest of it determines the powertrain of the equipment, the weight of the equipment, and all the rest of it. I'm no expert in a fire truck, and after I seen and went through the fire truck that they were showing, I can see I do not know anything about fire trucks compared to what I saw yesterday. It's really amazing. But the fire chief, I think, is really the spearhead. Rick as well has done procurement for equipment for many years. And between the two of them and Mike, the fire chief in Cumberland, and others, I think they're going to make a very good choice, and a choice that's necessary for our area. So that's all I can say at the moment. Ian, you can add to that.
Gary?
Mr. Chairman, maybe we take it in two steps. Once the chief and Ted and Rick have kind of settled on, yeah, this is, and the chief is getting input from the volunteers on this. But once basically they've come to a meeting of the minds in terms of the specs and what this truck really is going to look like and what are its primary functionalities, maybe we take it in 2 steps. The fire chief be invited to a board or a committee of the whole meeting, make a presentation on, okay, here's the truck. And here's what's going to be on it, and here's what we need, and get the board, give the board the opportunity to provide some input. Looks good, green light. Do that final step of drafting the RFP based on those specs, and then I'd come back to council or the board with a report with the RFP attached. Maybe that's the best way to do it.
And I think if step 1 had in there an estimated cost of the
Certainly.
must-haves, need-to-haves, or sorry, must-have, want, nice-to-haves kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Susanna, I see your hand is up.
Yeah, I was gonna say what you just said, which is I'd like to see a must-have and a want-to-have.
Mhm.
Okay. Eve, anything?
Oh, thanks.
Okay. Any further discussion on this one?
No.
Awesome. So we have hit the end of our agenda. Susanna, check back with you. Are you satisfied with the way the items you raised at the beginning have been covered?
Yes, I still am not clear about the issue with tax sale, but I'm sure that will become clear that somehow we can't do a tax sale. That's where I'm fuzzy.
So Gary, I guess that sort of remains with us moving forward, that you've got some
Forward.
work and you're still accessing legal advice and those sorts of things, and you'll be bringing a plan to us, right?
Mr. Chairman, I'm fuzzy too on that one, but absolutely, once we figure out a process to identify these B parcels, that would be part of my questioning to the lawyer. Okay, if we get huge pushback, and what are the options open to us? I mean, they're a little bit clearer on water tolls. I mean, ultimately, we have the authority under the policy to shut off the water. Parcel tax is a little grayer. So what are the options? Is it putting a notice on the title? Is it going to small claims court? Or is it tax sale? I'm questioning the tax sale authority, but that would be part of the advice that we'd have to come back with in terms of, if we're going to add B parcels, there's a process to do it. And here are the options if ultimately we have, what would be anticipated to be some pushback.
Right. And we currently have collection issues, period, with our
Yeah,
A parcels.
yeah,
So yeah,
We do.
With our A parcels.
right.
Yeah, okay, that, I was talking more about our existing A parcels. That's where I was confused, not so much. Okay,
But it really is the same question, right?
yeah, no.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so if there's anything further from anybody, or should we just have a motion to adjourn?
Questions, Mr. Chairman, from the public, or?
We could do that, like we generally do that at the public
No,
board
okay,
meeting.
My apologies.
But now that it's been raised, I'd hate to take it off the table. Is there anybody that would like to ask a question here, or can we go to the board meeting?
That's it.
Go ahead, Mary. As I understand it, iCity, so ICITY, is our accounting and our billing software. So the meter inputs, or meter read inputs, are put into that software, and that generates our bills. Yeah. Sorry.
I can answer that.
Yeah. Go ahead, Janice.
iCity is a program in Vatem. It's sort of like Excel is in Microsoft. So it's the same thing. iCity would work with the new meters, yes. Because what happens is they're read and they're downloaded into an Excel format, which is imported into the program. And just an aside, the regional district also uses iCity.
And then the software we've been talking about, Mary, is more of an automated software so that you would have Wi-Fi enabled meters. And so it would make reading much simpler and more cost effective, but it would also allow landowners to access their own accounts and see what their readings are and set up alerts that, you know, for example, you have a leak and your water usage is spiking on you, that it would give you an alert. I'd love to have Dan here to answer that, but I guess it would depend on the severity of the leak, right? Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think that we'll see what we can do about that. You fire away. I'd defer that one to Ted and to Gary to say, have you heard any discussion of that in this committee to say we're planning for having a marina?
Not that I know of. Regarding a marina, I do not know whether that has ever been brought up at the time. Again, in the future, if there is going to be a marina, I can imagine the fire department is going to have to acquire some ways and means to be able to fight a boat fire. You know, in case there's a fire in the dock or whatever. And again, at this time, I don't think that's been brought up at all.
Right. Thank you. That'd be great. You know, I've seen some press around the approval of a marina and the difficulties, the hurdles that they would have to go through to have that marina approved based on, you know, what's on the bottom of the harbor now and disturbing heavy metals and all those sorts of things, right? But I also would imagine that if that were to progress and move to an application, that we would be a party to that application and be asked to comment. And, you know, if a marina were to proceed, we could make comment or CVRD on our behalf at that point in time to say that, you know, there's requirements for additional firefighting capability should that marina go forward, and we'd like to be funded for it.
That might involve Transport Canada too, as well as social.
Yeah. But I would assume there would be some sort of review process that our fire department would be able to comment on.
Yeah.
Did that answer your questions, Mary? Thank you. I appreciate the feedback. Are there any other questions from anybody else that's on? See, there's a couple other landowners, but okay, if that's it, then thank you to everybody. May I have a motion to adjourn the meeting?
So move.
Second.
Yeah, Ian, can you switch me back to the host, please?
Okay, we better do that before we get out of here. And Mary, if we're not, can we call you?
Thanks,
where
Mary.
am I doing that? Got to go to participants before we do this. Go to Janice. More. Make host. Yes. You're now the host, Janice.
Yeah, it doesn't look like it recorded. So I'm wondering if when I switched, I don't
It
know.
fell off, yeah.
Gary, good thing you're here. Yeah, me too.
Thank you again, Mary.
Thank you
Okay.
again, Mary.
Thanks for backstopping us, Janice and Mary.
So we should probably just have our formal motion to adjourn. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right, guys, we'll see you in a couple of weeks.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thanks
Three, I
again.
guess. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Gary.